Welcome to this week's Supply Chain Update, brought to you by Phoenix International. Let's begin with market conditions across key trade lanes. For the Trans-Pacific eastbound market, carriers have reduced short-term rates on both coasts to boost bookings ahead of the Lunar New Year. However, freight all kinds rates remain higher than named account contract rates, with peak season surcharges still applied. Further adjustments to pricing are anticipated by mid-February. On the Far East westbound lane, the Lunar New Year holiday and alliance restructuring are helping carriers optimize capacity. Despite this, the market is still oversupplied and competition for market share is expected to pick up after the holiday, potentially driving rates downward. For the transatlantic westbound market, capacity is gradually opening up following the tentative labor agreement. While there are more options for shipments from North Europe to the U.S. East Coast, space from South Europe remains tight, impacted by blank sailings and service restructuring. Here's a quick update on operations. On the Trans-Pacific eastbound lane, equipment availability remains stable, with no major disruptions reported. In the Far East westbound markets, equipment availability remains consistent, though carriers are closely monitoring post-Lunar New Year activity to adjust resources if needed. For transatlantic westbound shipments, equipment shortages are still being reported in Central Europe, particularly in Austria, Switzerland, and Germany, which continues to present challenges for shippers. Now let's talk about capacity management. In the Trans-Pacific eastbound market, the pre-Lunar New Year rush is tightening space, especially on fixed allocations. Carriers are planning blank sailings to adjust for reduced demand after the holiday, and significant capacity is expected to return by late February. On the Far East westbound lane, alliance transitions have gone smoothly, but the market remains oversupplied. While U.S. tariff changes could increase exports to Europe, the impact on freight rates is expected to be minimal in the short term. In the transatlantic westbound market, capacity from North Europe is improving, but space from South Europe remains tight. Blank sailings and new services continue to influence availability as carriers restructure their networks. Moving on to the news of this week. In global trade news, President Trump has announced plans to impose new tariffs by February 1st. A 10% tariff will apply to Chinese imports, citing concerns over fentanyl distribution. A 25% tariff is also planned for imports from Canada and Mexico. These measures are in line with his campaign promises, but could lead to retaliation from the affected nations, potentially impacting consumer spending, domestic businesses, and the global trade environment. At the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, officials are reaffirming their commitment to green initiatives, even as federal policies change. For over 2 decades, these ports have worked to reduce emissions while handling record container volumes. Leaders have stated they are prepared to defend these sustainability efforts against potential federal rollbacks, ensuring that environmental progress continues. Spot rates have dropped sharply as Lunar New Year celebrations coincide with the reopening of the Suez Canal. Rates on the Shanghai to Los Angeles route declined by 8%, while Shanghai to Rotterdam rates dropped by 19%. Overcapacity and the return to shorter Suez routes are the primary drivers of this decline. While European port congestion may temporarily stabilize rates, analysts predict continued downward pressure in the coming months. President Trump's return to office is creating new uncertainty in the shipping industry. During his inaugural address, he accused China of controlling the Panama Canal and hinted at taking action. While no immediate tariffs have been implemented, Trump has pledged to introduce increases, potentially up to 100%, over unresolved trade disputes. These policies, combined with ongoing labor negotiations, are expected to further disrupt global shipping dynamics. And that concludes our update on the global supply chain. Thank you for joining us. We will continue to monitor these developments and keep you informed. You can follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube for more supply chain related updates.